It's Primus Tracks with Josh and Frankie.
What a couple of dumb shits.
Hello, Primates. Welcome to Primus Tracks. Hey, we have the making of Tales from the Punchbowl with the one and only Tim Soya Solyan. He gave us 2 hours of his time, told a lot of stories. We went track by track throughout the album and the making of, with some extras tossed in. So enjoy our talk with Tim, and next week we will dive right in to Tales from the Punchbowl. Later days.
Early Maze.
Song was not really a company yet. Adam Gates and Larry were good buddies and computer geekoids, stoners, and kind of got the computer ball rolling, right, within the Primus camp.
Okay.
Tim Alexander was the first one to actually get it rolling on, I think, Pork Soda. We had a case that became the practice room drum case that used to be this stand-up case, tall, that had like a tower and a monitor and a keyboard and all this crap in it when computers were not even laptops yet. You know?
Right.
So he got everyone interested, and Larry took the ball and ran with it. And then him and Adam Gates were running with that ball at the same time and figured out how to do graphics and all that. And that's where that all spawned out of.
Okay,
so Les got involved because he's the artist. And so him and Larry created all that kooky digital animation art that's the cover of that record.
Yeah. It says Les and Lur, original artwork, and Grapevine artwork, Adam Gates, yeah.
I mean, I'm telling you, dude, when we were up there doing that record, we had my computer, I got swarmed into that pile of, I got to get a computer. Okay, I got to keep up. I still have it. It's a Macintosh CS 190. Dude, it's a 1994 computer, laptop. 2 megabytes of RAM was the memory,
Yeah.
I'm not kidding, man. I still have it. It's hilarious. I saved it because it was so funny that I had that. Anyway, so Les always got the best one that was available. And of course, they changed every month. We'd get the computer company catalogs in the mail, and we'd all try to buy a new one. And of course, Les always bought the new best one. And I kept the same one because I don't have any money. And he did. So anyway, him and Larry, they went headstrong into creating, the digital art format that, with whatever tools were available at that time to make that cover and all the digital art, the Winona's Big Brown Beaver art that we used on the tour show was projected behind the band,
But I have a question about that, Tim. It's quite unusual that Les favors the vinyl cover with the penguin suits, but for some strange reason, the CD version has another image, and I think he didn't like it a lot. He said that it looked really dated. So do you know why they went for a different cover for the CD that Les didn't like?
I wasn't really involved in meetings or talks normally of like Les's deep, dark decision makings with the record label and artist direction and all that stuff. I was at the shoot where they did the Penguins. Mm-hmm. That was with Jay Blakesberg. What Jay Blakesberg didn't do it. It was another dude. I just read his name. I remember it was that dude.
Michael Halsband is what it says.
Yeah, Michael Halsband. Yeah. He's a famous photographer dude. But we did it at Jay Blakesberg's studio where we'd done many, many, many Primus, promo photo shoots, in his studio. So Les wanted to do a different photographer for that. And I have no idea why I had to go pick up penguin suits and bring them there. And they put them on after they did normal band hanging out, changing the pose every 2 seconds, photo shoots. And all of a sudden it was like, okay, so I go get the penguin suits. Okay. And they put them on. And we walked out of Jay's studio, which is down south of Market in the Mission District, not the Mission District, the south of Market area down there. And it's an offshoot alley. And they just walked down the street wearing the alley wearing these outfits. And Michael was like walking backwards, just taking photos of them. And we came across some like Mexican hot rod shop, and these Mexican dudes come out and they're like, whoa, what the fuck are these dudes doing in penguin suits, man? And like, we're just like, oh, dude. And Les is like flapping his arms and Michael's taking snaps as fast as he can. And these dudes come out and start flashing waves of $100 bills, and they get in the picture with the penguins, Awesome. I've never seen those photos, but they were taken. I know that. This funny shit happened always, man. It was you could never really figure out what was going to happen or anticipate what was going to happen when Les was doing something artistic like that was so quirky.
And were you around, Tim, for the performance at the David Letterman show?
Was I around? Dude, of course I was there.
Well,
that was the most incredibly tense moment
I was just about to ask you that.
Okay, so the record's about to come out. The Beaver becomes the first single, right? And they had done this shoot with the penguin outfits, and the art starts coming together, and they're doing the computer art, whatever. It's all kind of coming together, and I'm not really aware of what the art's going to look like per se. The final cuts, Les isn't showing me. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? Which sometimes he did, but a lot of times he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, we're going to go to Letterman, and we're going to go do Letterman show. Okay, cool. Bring the penguin suits. Okay, cool. So we bring the suits, we bring the clothes, we go to New York. We get down to Letterman, and Letterman is you go down there in the afternoon and you do a sound check with the band, right? And David's not there. David Letterman's not there. You work it out with the band because, Paul Schaefer loves to play with any band that shows up and get his face on the camera because he's, Paul Schaefer, Mr. He does this little hand race thing, whatever.
Yeah. He's a goof.
Nice guy. Super nice guy. So we do the sound check. Everything's cool. They call it camera blocking, where they find out what the band looks like and how they're set up and where they make notes of which camera they're going to go to during the performance, right? And they say, okay, make sure you kind of keep it like this so we have the right camera. We can turn it this way a little bit if we have to, but try to keep it in your position where you are. So everything's totally copacetic. Everything's great. We go downstairs. Okay, cool. Let's get some food. We go get some food, or we eat sandwiches down there. The Letterman, okay, so the Letterman show starts going. You know what I mean? And it gets to the point of where the band's going to come on, and the woman who was our liaison, the stage manager, she comes in and says, "Okay, you guys, 10 minutes till Primus needs to be on the side stage, ready to go." We're like, okay, and the crew's up there, Pork Chop and Jerry and I can't remember who was the guitar tech on that one, are ready to push the drum set out and hand the dudes guitars, and they come out and play the song, right? So Les goes, okay, 10 minutes, put the penguin suits on. He didn't tell anybody at Letterman he was going to do that.
Yeah.
Nobody. I'm like helping them all get in these silly fucking costumes that we fucking flew in my suitcase, to get there. They put them on. They stand up. Okay, here we go. And the chick comes to the door. It's a sliding glass door back then to the little dressing room downstairs. I'm telling you, dude, I've never seen anyone turn so white like a ghost in my entire life. She fucking looked at them and turned white, put her hands on her face as she started crying and turned around and ran away.
Oh my gosh.
We're like,
oh God.
Me and Trows look at each other and we look at Les and he's like, uh-oh. But Les pulled the trigger, said, let's do this. We're just going to unannounced come out in penguin suits,
Yeah.
And I mean, it's an organized thing to do TV shows like that. You can't just pull out a penguin suit without telling anybody. So all of a sudden, the chick comes back, bawling tears. She's like, okay, I'm talking to the producer. Oh my God, you guys might not be able to play. David Letterman's not going to be able to approve this. He has no idea. Oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. Okay, you might have to change out of those suits at the last fucking second. And so it's like, oh fuck, we're scrambling. And Les is like, fuck it, she's like, what do we do? I'm like, okay, I'm going to grab all your guys' pants and shirts and I'll get them to the top of the stairs. And if Letterman disapproves on the commercial break, you guys can whip those things off and we'll put your clothes back on. And you can fucking go out and play in your clothes, right? So here's a pile of clothes, right where that African-American dude stands with the headset on, where right where the bands all come walking out.
Biff, old Biff, yeah.
Yeah, yes, Biff. So he's standing there and he's got the headset on. He's looking at me, piling all these clothes up. And then the dudes come out with their penguin suits, and it's a really tiny studio, man. Yeah. And they're crowded in this little tiny area with Biff, and then we're just like, fuck. And it's like, okay, we'll be right back after this with Primus. And it's like, commercial break. And fucking, dude, they go running out there to tell David Letterman what has happened, because he has no idea he's been doing the show. He gets out of the limo and goes to his desk, finishes the show, and goes back to his limo and goes home.
Yeah.
He has no connection to what's going on in all the fiddle-faddle around the moment he gets there and the moment he leaves, right? So they went out there and they're whispering in his ear, and he's poking his head up and he's going, and he's looking at the CD and he's like, so they come running back. They go, okay, David says it's fine. You can wear the penguin suits. He doesn't care. You can do whatever you want. Okay, and 3, 2, 1, go. And so they go running out there in the fucking penguin suits and get their guitars on. And if you've seen the clip, Letterman goes, okay, so this band is number 8 in the country this week. They're called Primus, and I think they got a little too much Batman Fever, but here's Primus. Dude. It was like, oh my God, dude, the most stressful fucking 10 minutes of my life, dude, with Primus for sure.
Yeah, that had to be something because like you said, they block it all out, but then Les is running all over that stage too during that performance.
And his little beaky thing starts falling down on his face, and he's trying to tip his head back so he can the mic. I've seen it many times. I mean, not in a while, but I watched it a few times when it got up on YouTube. Cracked me up that I was there, you know. Funny.
I'm curious, Tim, about this particular period regarding television performances, because it was a particularly active year for Primus to be on TV. I mean, with this album, besides Letterman, there's a performance of Mrs. Blayling on Conan O'Brien. And just recently, I mean, just like a month ago, another performance surfaced on a television program called Most Wanted, and they performed Wynona's Big Brown Beaver and Mrs. Blayling on that show. And I'm telling you, Josh and I had never even seen that before. We had no idea that it existed.
Who was the drummer? Was it Tim?
Tim. And it's really strange because the camera guy is like going like washing machine style all the time during the performance. So it's really hard to watch. But we had no idea they even performed. If you could
send me a link, because
of course.
We would go do MTV stuff, and they would just kind of filter it into different shows that happened later that, you know, weren't shows at the time. They might have done a performance for something else. You know what I mean?
So I assume that nothing was as eventful as the David Letterman performance, right?
Wrong. Well, everything was eventful. Oh, wait, that was just an extreme eventful moment. Are you kidding? Everything was a fucking barrel of laughs of that band. Are you kidding? Come on.
Do you recall any particular things about the Conan O'Brien show or the other one?
The Conan O'Brien show was funny because I actually was not at that show. We were in the midst of a Punchbowl run, and we were playing in Anaheim was the next show. We had a night off. They got asked to do Conan, and the only way they could do it is if Jerry and Porkchop took a bass and a guitar, those two dudes and the band and Derek and Trouse got on a private jet and jetted to New York. Yeah. Just in time after the show the night before. They might have flown overnight to get there on a private jet, get there for the afternoon performance. I had to stay. And so me and a buddy of mine who was on tour with us hanging out, we were sitting in the bar next to the hotel watching the performance at the sports bar right outside the Anaheim Arena. It was hilarious, dude. And it was like, there they are. I'm not there. Hilarious, man. I was not at that one. I just got to watch it.
Okay.
But there were circumstances why I wasn't there. They couldn't squeeze more people on the plane. There was only 6 seats or 7 seats.
Oh, okay.
You know?
I was curious about that performance in particular because Tim's kit seemed very small, and I didn't know what was going on there.
That kit was brought in by Joe Montanari, who is a custom drum builder who I played his drums. I'm endorsed by his drum company for my snare drums since 1991. I got turned on to him by Brain. I called him and said, hey, dude, you know, Jerry Johnson knows him as well. He's worked with his drums with Fish Fisher and with other artists in LA and stuff. So we're all good friends with this custom drum guy. So Joe Montanari drove from Hartford, Connecticut area with that drum kit.
Oh, okay.
No idea. Me and Jerry said, Joe, you got to help us out. We got nothing. We don't want to use a DW kit. We need something special. And so he brought that kit down.
Nice. Okay. That's where that came from.
I don't even remember. I haven't seen that clip in quite a long time, so I'd have to look at it again to see what the kid is. I could call Joe right now. He'd tell me exactly what it is.
Those two performances, you know, I was 14 years old and stayed up and videotaped them and wore those out, man. Watched them over and over again. I think my favorite thing about the Blayling performance is there's a shot Larry's, I think, soloing, and you can see the rest of the stage in the background, and Andy Richter is sitting there, and he looks so bored.
It's funny because that's the first time Primus played on that show.
Yeah.
I don't know how many more times Les and any of those guys have played on that show. I mean, I've done it maybe 20 plus times with handfuls of bands over the years, you know. But Larry was a huge Andy Richter fan, and one of his favorite movies at the time was Cabin Boy. So you'll hear Larry over the years comment about Cabin Boy and Andy Richter being his buddy or his favorite. And at one point, I remember going up into Prawn Song when we had the graphic studio in the warehouse where they rehearsed upstairs. And some friend of a friend in LA had gotten Larry a headshot promo of Andy Richter, and he wrote, it was just on the wall framed, and it said, to Larry. And he wrote on the picture, I am a big showbiz phony or something like that, fake. And Larry framed it and put it up in Pronzine. It was hilarious. And it was all about Cabin Boy. They might have hung out that day. I don't remember meeting Andy Richter that day.
Tim, I've seen some recordings of Punchbowl era shows on YouTube, and there's a particular show where some crew guys are coming on stage, between songs, like to put some water bottles near the drum kit or to fix some things, and they are actually wearing the penguin suits from the photo shoot. Do you know who those guys are?
I can answer that question. So, one thing in touring America with rock and roll bands that are doing great, there's 2 major cities that are the most important shows in musicians' heads of the entire tour. One is New York and the other is LA.
Uh-huh.
Right? So it doesn't matter who the artist is, at what level the artist gets to, whether they're a club band or they're a stadium band. When you play LA or you play New York, it's going to be a spectacle that everybody's going to be focusing on. Press, media, friends, the industry, everybody shows up to those shows. You can't get tickets in New York for the crew. You can't get tickets in LA for the crew because they're reserved for all those knuckleheads, right? So Les came up with the idea. When we get to LA and we get to New York, it was Fussy. Chris Fusel was the guitar tech on that tour. So Jerry, Fussy, and Pork Chop, he said, you guys got to wear the penguin suits. And they totally said, fuck you. We're not doing that. And he said, okay, I'll give you guys X amount of money, cash in hand. You have to do this. You got to do it.
Oh, man.
$100 a show or whatever it was. And they were like, okay, for cash, we'll do it. So it was only in LA and it was only in New York City that they did the crew guys wore the penguin suits during the show. Just the 3 tech dudes, Dude, I'm telling you, man, I laughed so fucking hard at those guys that they did not want to do it, man. And I didn't have to do it. And I'm always the one that has to do stupid shit,
Yeah.
And so for once, and they would laugh at me all fucking day long on the tour, for all the stupid shit I'd have to go through with Les fucking poking at me, and all of a sudden coming up on stage and seeing those guys in those outfits and Fussy in the penguin outfit tuning Larry's guitar with the dude. I remember laughing so hard, and he just looked at me and shook his head and said, don't fuck with me right now, dude. I'm not in a good mood. Trying to do my professional job, and I'm wearing a fucking penguin suit, dude. That was awesome, man. That's what that is. That was only those 2 cities, LA and New York, were the only ones that got that.
I like those little tales from the road that surface,
dude,
man.
We could do a whole episode of stupid shit. I'm telling you.
Considering we are embarking on Tales from the Punchbowl, we can get into the recording of that album. I mean, you were there. You're right here in the credits. Studio assistant, Tim Soya Solyan. There you go.
There's only one person that's credited with helping with that record in the studio.
That's you.
That's you.
How far before that we started the recording do you want to go? Because I can lead you up to that moment, or do you want to just start with the moment?
Oh, no. Lead us up, please. Take our hands.
Okay, well, you all know we already had our interview about Suck on This and Prior Moment that I was involved in, right?
Yeah.
And I stepped out of the situation with them and did my band Victim's Family. And I didn't do Frizzle Fry. I didn't do Tales from the Punchbowl. Seas of Cheese, and I didn't do Pork Soda or Miscellaneous Debris. Although I was with those guys and I'm their friend, and as we both crossed paths, we would hang out and party and go to shows and whatever. So in 1994, Victim's Family decided we're done. And so we stopped touring. We ended the Europe tour, came home, and I was like sitting there scratching my fucking head going, what am I going to do? Me and my wife, she wasn't my wife yet at the time. She is now. Sitting there in Petaluma going, what the fuck am I going to do? Okay, so I started calling some industry friends going, I'll just be a drum roadie again or a roadie, like I used to do.
Yeah.
Calling around. Yeah, I got a couple bites of possible this, possible that. Fuck, what are we going to do? Shit. I don't want to go work and dig ditches again. Come home one day and, we had the old tape machine, answering machine for your phone, And I hit play. And there's a message. Hey, Soya, you know who this is. You know how to get a hold of me. Give me a call. Click. I'm like, that's Claypool. I haven't talked to him in a 6 months or a year. So I called management, talked to Dave, and he's like, hey, he's got a new number. He just moved up to Sonoma County where you're at. What? No way. Call him up. Sure enough, he's like, dude, fuck, what do you do now? I've been golfing. Well, you golf? I was embarrassed to tell you that I golf too. Shit, let's go golfing. Let's hang out, dude. So we start hanging out again like as buddies because he lived a half hour from me all of a sudden, not like an hour and a half into the city, or less than that. So we start hanging out, and he's like, yeah, dude, we're going to do some sausage gigs. You want to help us out? Yeah, fuck yeah. So I do a couple sausage gigs, and then he's like, okay, so dude, we're going to go to my new house up in Occidental, and we're going to record our next record. Do you want to help out and be the assistant? Yes. Of course.
No
You don't say no when you got nothing going on in life unless Claypool asks you to help him. You fucking go help him. He's one of your buddies. So I said, okay, I'm in, dude. Let's do it. And I got paid peanuts to do it, barely any money. They got me a pager when we had pagers before cell phones. First time and only time I ever had a pager was a Primus pager. And so that was it. I fucking rented a truck and went and got Tim's drums and all the gear and stuff out of Ultrasound where it was stored and drove it up to Les's house, and loaded it into his little granny unit out behind the pool, behind the house.
Yeah.
And we set it up.
There was a lot of because that was it seems like he had just kind of moved in and said, okay, we'll just record it here. So
he had grand ideas, when he looked at the place. I think it was part of his vision of that place was, there's the big house. Whatever goofy, funny 70s mansion-y house. You go out the back door and there's the swimming pool. On the other side of the swimming pool was 2 rooms with a breezeway between them. Right, one side was a studio granny unit with a little kitchenette and a bathroom shower. And you crossed the breezeway and it was an open game room with a tile floor.
Okay.
And one side had a little gardening greenhouse thing. And the other side had like an aquarium, not aquarium, but what is it called where you have like hot plants, tropical plants it's like another thing with dirt in the ground. The other one had cement on it. Whatever. It was just this weird fucking setup from the 70s, And the granny unit, which he was like, this is going to be the studio, dude. This is it. And it didn't have a dining room. It's one big room, living room. And against the wall is some shelving and stuff. And then there's like a table folds down off the shelves and becomes your kitchen table because there's no other room. He had this Mackie board, this 24-channel Mackie board sitting on that table. And he's like, dude, this is it. It's my new studio, dude. Check it out. And he had like some racks under it that Derek Featherstone had gotten him that had ADAT players in them, which they had done pork soda with, right? Mm-hmm. Which was a new technique at the time of recording onto VHS tapes digital. But you had to have one VHS tape for every 8 tracks.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
Each VHS tape could only hold 8 tracks. So his board was 24 channels, so we needed 4 ADATs. So you had to sync 4 ADAT players, push 4 tapes in at the same time so they locked in together within the couple seconds that they all loaded. It was so archaic yet new. So I'm like, okay, cool. What do we do? Cool. He's like, okay, dude. So yeah, bring the gear in here. We're just going to put a little guitar amp for Larry in the shower and put a piece of carpet over it. Okay. I'm like, where's the bass amp going? He goes, I'm just going direct through my little pedal setup here. There's not going to be any bass amp. Okay, cool. Well, I got these drum cases. There's no fucking drums in them. He goes, oh yeah, Tim's got new drums coming. So sure enough, I had to go back down to the Bay Area from there, which is a 2.5-hour trip, pick up these boxes of Tim's new Tama drums because he had just signed with Tama Drums at the time.
Yeah.
Bring it all up and start unwrapping it. And Tim shows up. He's like, yeah, dude, I just was in LA last week. I just signed to Tama. I was down there. We built this kit. And so I'm like unwrapping this kit. And I'm like, well, do you know how to set it up? He goes, well, no. They said they would mark it so to put the pieces together correct. I mean, it was like the tubes and the plumber drummer shit and fucking, dude, it was like the Punchbowl kit. Huge, man.
Yeah.
So I figured it all out. And we got it set up in the middle of the room. And it was like, okay. Fucking A, dude. And like Les is just putting mics on shit, and we're just like getting ready. And he's like trying to do some Tim's. Soya, just go fucking play some drums, Well, no, it was just me and him for a lot of it for the beginning, once everything got set up. So Tim and Larry finally got the call like, okay, let's do this. We're ready. Me and Soya got this thing dialed in, we're ready to go. My new studio is ready to rock,
Wow.
So here we go. The band shows up and we just spent the months doing it, man.
So it sounds like a lot of trial and error getting the sound that was desired or just kind of exploring and going, that sounds good, keep it.
It's pretty organic, because it had never been recorded in before. Because Les is such a stickler in his ways, it didn't matter what it sounded like. That was his studio, and that's what it sounded like. You read about these articles about bands that go to these bazillion-dollar-an-hour studios, and they go, oh, we don't like the way this room sounds. We're going to go to New York and go to this other studio that the producer likes. It's like, no. We're set up. Here we go. We were there. We were recording there. That's whatever. Nobody had a say. It's like, that's Les is the producer, you know, we're there. We're doing it at his house, you know. He was really steadfast on we're doing it here.
Yeah, it seems like as we go through the progression of the albums, they all are pretty DIY to an extent because they were producing themselves.
Pork Soda was the first one that they really did it DIY.
Okay.
I mean, Suck on This was recorded live at the Berkeley Square.
Yeah.
That was just Matt Weiniger with a little live desk, just kind of recording it with a reel-to-reel on the desk. That was Les's old desk, which Brian Keogh owns right now. Les gave it to him recently. Frizzle Fry, they did a Different Fur, which was a recording studio on 19th Ave in the Mission in San Francisco, which is on the ground floor of where Primus management offices were. And then they did Seize the Cheese at Fantasy, which was the big heavy-duty studio in Berkeley, Fantasy recording studio, where a lot of heavies have recorded over the years. So they went full bore on that one because they got the Interscope money on that one, you know? And Les said, let's take it there. Let's do this. And then being disillusioned by all of that in a sense of home recording was coming out, he wanted to do it himself, you know, and not want to pay all this money to have other people do it when he knew he could do it himself. And so him and Derek worked together to record Pork Soda at Ultrasound, which I think Derek and Ron Wrigley were the only ones that helped him with that. Yeah. There was no assistant engineers that I know of. I mean, I wasn't around for that one, so I didn't even know about any of it when it was going on.
Yeah, so as you describe it, it does seem like they're taking more and more steps in that direction. And then here for, you know, Matt Weiniger produced Frizzle Fry, but then the band's producing themselves. They've got Ron, who they know and trust. And, you know, the studio heads really aren't poking their heads in too much, it seems. And then they get a record at Les's house, which is pretty awesome. So they really get to take the bull by the horns there.
You got to know that Les calls the shots, you know, and that was always his game from day one. Even when they signed to Interscope, I mean, I've heard him say it in many interviews when in the early Interscope moments where he said, you know, we're Primus, you know, we're not going to be molded into what somebody wants us to be to make them more money, you know, for their record label. We signed to Interscope because they gave us a great deal and they gave us 100% control of how we want our music to sound. We're not going to be, you know, told it needs to be this, it needs to be that. We need to get a hit. We need that. And so they went with Interscope and did it, you know, and they got on MTV and they got all over the fucking world on that shit. And it got them that foundation that is never going to crumble, you know?
Yeah.
It was a smart move by Les. And the moment that he knew they could steer away from that, he did.
Yeah.
Went straight to his house. So I'll make my own fucking record. I don't need you guys. I'll keep that money and make my own record for a third of it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Right. You're not paying for a studio, so why not? The other thread I'm seeing, and I saw it in interviews at the time, and going back and looking at older interviews, he seemed pretty jazzed about the idea of just going into the studio and jamming it out and figuring it out. They did bring some stuff in. Of course, Frizzle Fry, they had it ready to go, went in, jammed it out. Yeah. Most of it was ready for Seize the Cheese, but in some Pork Soda interviews, he said, you know, we went in with some songs, but jammed out the rest, and it was a lot of fun to kind of work without a net. And I remember reading for Punchbowl, they went in with absolutely zero. Is that true? Like,
that is absolutely correct.
Wow.
I was kind of perplexed by that because, you know, being through the whole catalog of Primus's recordings and the moments that all those songs kind of came about, obviously all the Todd Huth early stuff, you know, I came in, you know, in 87, 88, it was already, they were playing those songs. But I'm saying beyond that, you know, Frizzle Fry, Larry only had 2 songs, I think, on Frizzle Fry, 2 or 3 songs. Or no, Suck on This, he had 2 songs, which was, what's the Larry You're a Bastard song? The Heckler.
Yeah.
And I think Pressman is on that, maybe?
Yep.
Are the only 2 songs that Les brought in that Todd hadn't written the guitar melodies to, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So then you get to Frizzle Fry, and it's still Les trying to unleash his catalog of what he had already had, you know? And of course, there's a couple fillers in there that were great, and Larry was starting to find his niche in that band. But then they get to Seize the Cheese, and they spent, you know, months in the rehearsal studio writing those tunes, you know? Those were not created at Fantasy.
Right.
Because I remember seeing them play at the Warfield and other shows where the first time I ever heard Jerry Was a Race Car Driver and Dan Blue Collar Tweakers was at one of those shows at the sound check and just sitting there going, whoa, dude. And Les had the 6-string fretless bass. You know, it was like, what the fuck? And he's like, yeah, dude, even jamming it up. It's like, oh, fuck, dude, it sounds great, you know? So they really worked hard knowing that they were going to do this Interscope release, you know, and they spent a lot of time shedding in the studio arranging those tunes, you know, and coming up with them. And then You can tell on Pork Soda, there's a lot of jamming going on, dude. Yeah. It's like, roll the tape. Let's just see if we can find something in there. It's like Hamburger Train is a jam. That's not a song.
Right.
You know? Like, I was disappointed in that record because of that, because of, I was so into Les's complex structures of the way he would do things and the way his characters would go around these goofy right turns of song styles within one song, which is what my band was all about at the same time as well. And a lot of bands were in the Bay Area. And then all of a sudden it was like, hey, I was like, come on, where's the fucking song, dude? What's what the fuck is My Name is Mud? That's your first single? I mean, I was really disappointed as an early fan because it just was not melting my face when I first heard it. You know, it was like, oh God, I have to get used to this, I guess. You know, it's a new Primus. So then, of course, they get to Punchbowl. I'm not kidding you, man. They had not played together for months, man. They had finished the Pork Soda tour and took time off. Les did a bunch of that Sausage tour with Helmet and Rollins.
Yeah.
And then we did a bunch of Bay Area Sausage stuff. And then all of a sudden it turned into let's record. And so the band shows up and then they're like, okay, what are we doing? So they started, you know, and the first song that happened was Winona's Big Brown Beaver was the very first song.
Oh, I'm very curious about that song, Tim. You know, now that Josh brought up the development of the tracks and you mentioned Winona's Big Brown Beaver in particular, they did premiere the song on New Year's Eve 1994, and musically, it's exactly like the album version. Lyrically, it's really different, and it's impossible to figure out what Les is singing. But what interests me the most is that Les said in an interview that the way we hear the song on the record is not the way it was conceived originally. He said that it was just meant to be a transitional track and that it was very short and slow.
Yep.
Do you have any recollection about that embryonic version of Winona?
What I can figure out of what I've gathered the same way you have, and I'm a little closer to knowing him talk about it in tighter circles, is that he was trying to come up with ideas in his own head to bring to the plate, to the Punchbowl recordings, right?
Uh-huh.
There was no cell phones. The internet was like, you couldn't get on it yet. You know, it was a government thing at that point, you know, so it was all phone calls, like on an actual phone, you know, that you were able to talk to people and, you know, hey, Lur, here's a new lick I got. Like maybe he did that on the phone. I don't know. You know, I mean, I didn't listen to every phone call he ever made back then, but all I know is that when we started and the first thing he did was that song, right? And so he had said later, I found out was that, like what you're saying, Frankie, is that he did have it in his head to be one of his little transitional songs, you know, like a little ditty, like he likes to call them, you know? And so he started playing it just to like open the book of what they were going to do, you know, like, okay, here we all are. I got this jam. It goes, giddy, giddy, giddy. And it's like, what's that? You know, and Tim looks at me and he's just like, and then all of a sudden it just turned into that groove, right? And we did it for, you know, a day or 2 days. And I remember going to get lunch at one point and Les is mixing. And so me and Laura and Tim took off. And I remember Tim saying, man, what in the fuck? This is fucking stupid, man. There's nothing. It's like the same fucking thing for the whole song. It's like, what is this? I'm like, dude, just go with it, man. And he's like, I know. He's like, but man, you know, just venting, you know, like friendly venting, just like, fuck. I just keep going, kadoo-doo, cut, kadoo-doo, cut for like 10 minutes all day. And we got to get this thing figured out. So that was the first thing that they stumbled on of Les. And because it kind of came together like it did, it became a song and not a ditty, you know, not a little filler, you know.
And how do you feel personally about the song, Tim? Because it's such a divisive song amongst Primus fans.
I mean, I love that song to death. I was so stoked when we got to the finish point and listening to the spectrum of everything that we had done, which is quite a big spectrum. That song is amazing, you know. It's one of those songs that you just stumble on, and it came together within a day or two, you know. I mean, I write songs, I play drums, I've been in bands, I've recorded. Every once in a while, some of your best, most liked songs are ones that came up within 10 minutes that you just kind of popped it together and there it is. Yeah. And Les just forces the idea. He goes, I got it. And I like that beat. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. And then as they're jamming, he's worrying in his head of the arrangement and probably what he's going to do with it, you know, because it just started right there, man. He didn't have an arrangement. He didn't have lyrics yet. He didn't have any of that. He just said, I got this jam. It goes, ba-dee-dee, It's just Les, man, and that's musicians, how it goes sometimes, you know?
Yeah. It's I would say roughly half and half. I'm sure it's not 50-50, but it seems like half of those tracks are really well formed and thought out. And you can tell that the other half are based on jams, and they go some places, but they're a little looser. To put it that way.
Yeah. It wasn't as loose as Pork Soda. And I think that I can't confirm this. I'm just telling you my own personal opinion. I feel that Les got a lot of lashback about how relaxed the writing was on Pork Soda.
Uh-huh.
I mean, come on. I mean, you listen to that record, some of the best tunes are the stuff Todd still got his foot in on, Welcome to This World. I'm not good, but the intricate, weird, crazy stuff was Larry still trying to keep this Todd thing going, that Les was forcing on everybody. So it turned into, we're just going to do it in the rehearsal studio and Derek's going to record it. Let's just jam some shit out, It's like, oh, God, come on, man. All the Primus fans are going, come on, dude. Give us some Primus, man. I mean, I like some of the stuff on Pork Soda. I'm not going to say I don't like that record. It really grew on me. Some of the songs did in the end, The Bob, I like that. Yeah. I like DMV. DMV's all right. What's the song where Tim does the big snare thing in the end?
Nature Boy.
Nature Boy.
I love that one. Was great live on the Punchbowl tour. I always look forward to that one coming up when it did. It was awesome. My Name is Mud turned into the Thrash Pit song, and so you had to love that one. It really got the crowd pumped. It was important to be at a show, and when Larry kicks in that guitar part, and then Mosh Pit starts bouncing up and down and running in a circle, like the energy level goes up.
Yeah.
You had to love that song. So I felt when they got to Punchbowl, Les really wanted to try to get back to more structure. Even though they were creating that music on the fly in the jams in the studio, we would record everything to cassette tape and put it in the truck. And whenever we drive around, we'd be listening to it and he would be arranging it, in his head. And then we'd go back, okay, here's what I hear. This part 4 times, this, that, let's go to that. I love that drum thing. That he was like working on it as they were writing it. It wasn't like he came in and said, here's the song.
Right.
In fact, I don't think there's any song on that record that I can remember him saying, here's the song.
So it was truly this build it as you're driving, I guess, or
right
to
on.
use one of those metaphors,
And it totally was. I'm telling you, man.
Yeah.
I listened to that whole record just now an hour ago, and okay, we can go song to song. And I can tell you, I was remembering stuff from the moment, really trying to rack my brain, and everything brought back a memory. We can break it down.
Yeah, we can go track by track if you'd like. That'd be great.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would. I do.
I mean, it was 26 years ago, 28, whatever it was. So
yeah.
I really wanted to hear it on my own without talking to you guys, not listening to it. So I sat and listened to the whole thing, beginning to end. So I got a little bit of idea of what all those tracks are again.
Well, let's start with you are probably the world's biggest fan, or at least from what we've seen, you are the world's biggest fan of Professor Nutbutter's House of Treats. So what's
Well, that's funny. That song might have been second or third of the ones they came up with. It was really early on. I remember that. And Les came up with the right? He came up with that thing, and they just kind of started going, and he's like, okay, they start grooving, and Larry starts playing that cool guitar part. And, Les on the fly comes up with the way it's going to get arranged a lot of times to get the foundation of what it's going to turn into. Mm-hmm. And so it developed into itself. And I knew right then and there when they recorded it, it's a thunder fucking rocker, and it was going to be great live, because the Primus crowd loves a thunder rocker,
Yeah.
I do remember once the lyrics were recorded, like Les will never let anybody be there when he sings. He's always alone. He does it at night when no one's around. He won't even let me there when he's recording vocals. I've never seen him sing vocals. Maybe walked down and then he like said, shh, and then did one line, then took it all apart, said, okay, move on. He does not want anybody around. So I remember all of a sudden, I show up the next day at his house out from driving up there, and it's like, and he's playing, mixing Nut Butter, and the lyrics are on there, and he's like, I'm listening to it. I'm just going, what in the fuck kooky shit have you come up with, dude? And so in the room across from the breezeway, the open room with the tile floor, he had a pool table. And that was kind of the escape room where, you want to get away from music, you go over and shoot pool. Yeah. And he got this gigantic fucking traditional size pool table that was so big. If you had to shoot from one end to the long end, nobody nobody could ever make a fucking ball, So if you played on a drunken party night out there, two people that did not play pool, it would take 2 hours for them to get through one game. It was like that kind of a pool table. So you would go over there, we'd hang out. And anyway, I digress. But I remember over there, we were listening to it. We had speakers in that room that were tied into the studio that we got hooked up so we could like put the mix on and go listen to these shitty little speakers. But we just wanted to hear it through shitty speakers and play pool and get out of that room, right?
Yeah.
But we're listening to Nut Butter. It was me and Les, and we're playing pool. And I'm just like, dude, what are these lyrics about, dude? What is this shit? Who the fuck is Professor Nut Butter? And what the fuck? And, he explained to me his story of the inchworm. Do you know about the story about the lyrics? It's like,
because the music itself is quite menacing, but when you listen to the lyrics on the record and the delivery from Les, it leaves you a bit confused. Why is he talking about a worm? And then when you read the story that he wrote for the enhanced CD,
right.
It's really a compelling piece of writing.
Like I say, all my CDs are in a storage unit because we moved. And I couldn't pull out my Punchbowl CD to read the lyrics. Are they on the CD?
The lyrics to the song, yeah.
Because I couldn't read because reading the lyrics really brings back a lot, as I was listening to the lyrics.
Do you recall the story that you wrote for the song?
So he told me when I asked him, and you got to remember, I'm just back in the fold with Les, and we're making a record, and they're superstars now, and I'm his buddy, but he's being very secretive about everything with me, thinking I might be leaking secrets.
Yeah.
So he's very cautious about what he wanted to tell me when he wanted to tell me. And there were moments where, he would tell me stuff. And that was the moment where I said, come on, dude, what's up with these lyrics? Who's this professor? Where'd you come up with this shit? Because I'm blunt like that. I'll ask him flat out like that shit. And he's like, oh, it's like it's like this, dude. There's a professor and he's got this inchworm. And he's trying to measure when an inchworm is longer, is it an inch? Or when he's squished up, is it a half an inch dip? And he's got this equation, and he also owns this candy factory. And I'm just like, oh, God, dude, you got to be kidding me. It's your shot, dude. Go. We're playing pool. That just turns into less like going off into his tangent of like what he's thinking. And sometimes you can't make heads or tails out of it because it's so hilariously awesome, But you don't want to make heads or tails out of it, You want that mystique of what Les's goofy cartoonisms are,
Yeah.
And keep it like that. I don't want to know about it, dude, in some senses, in some situations. So.
Let the mystery remain. Did you guys know that was going to be, or did the band know pretty early on creating this track that it was going to be the opener?
No. None of that was even in play yet. It just songs unfolded as they unfolded, and they were trying to collect enough to be, a 70 to 80 minute format to fill up a CD. That's really what the key was, to make sure we had enough and we could sift through if there was too much and find the best stuff. So, a funny note on that one as well, as we recorded and Larry would come in after we got the drums and bass lined up.
Yeah.
And Larry would play, tracks, rough tracks, and then he'd come in and redo them, And a lot of times I would sit with him and hit start, stop, go back, record, because he didn't like to take. And Les didn't want to sit there. And he had just had Cage at that time. So let's go, Soya, you run the fucking this. That's the only time he ever let me run anything, was hitting stop, rewind, record for Larry until Larry decided he was happy with a take on something. And in the end of that song, when Larry starts going, and he goes on for like 10 minutes, it seems like, he just keeps doing the same thing over and over. Man, it took a while. It took an hour or so. I remember it was like, he just kept having to stop because his hand was hurting, He's like, what the fuck am I writing this for, dude? What am I doing to myself? I'm like, come on, man. You can do it. Come on, one more try. Rewind. Come on, record. Go. And he just finally got it, man. And it got to the end, and he goes even higher. He goes, and gets to that very end thing. Oh, my God. You pulled it off, brother. Awesome. We got to take. It was cool, man.
Good. It's cool that they're pushing themselves that way, too.
That's what I expected. I wasn't – there's no such thing as, like, phoning it in when you're Primus. But for me, Pork Soda is the most phoned in record of all their records.
So, Tim, you just mentioned that Les was particularly secretive during this time. And Mrs. Blayling is actually based on a true story. And just recently, he actually revealed the real names of the characters in the song. Did he confide in you at the time anything regarding the original story?
He told me the whole story, of course. Because I asked him. Because I'm there. I'm like running the board while he's trying to figure shit out. I'm there. I'm his assistant. And, when you're sitting there working on a mix for Mrs. Blayline for like 5 hours, sitting there, it's like I start, you're like, okay, rewind the tape. Like, dude, what is this about? You ask questions,
Yeah.
and he divulges stuff, of course, and he told me the real story. It's about high school teacher that he had and a couple of students that got, berated and bullied by this teacher. He decided in the end, I think Tom Wally is the one that actually, from Interscope, influenced him to change the names. Don't do it, man. Don't put the real, because the original vocal track he did had the real names in it.
Wow.
And so he changed it for legal reasons. Just didn't want to even go down that alley. Why not? Why? Who cares? Just change it.
Yeah, why
So
leave yourself open to that, for sure.
Don and Ron, I think he said, but those weren't the names of the two dudes. And the teacher's name wasn't Mrs. Blayline. It was something else.
Right.
I remember him singing that, and then all of a sudden the next day I came back, he had sung it again because I'm not allowed to be there when he sings, and it changed to Mrs. Blayline. And I was like, what? It's like, oh, yeah, me and Tom talked, and I'm not going to use their names. It's like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Do you remember if that track started with the bass line? I mean, it probably did, but I'm curious if you remember how that one came together, because that one's got some nice structure to it.
It's trippy. I mean, we started that record in maybe May, I think, of 94. And I think it was completed at Rancho in December and came out in 95, even though we recorded it in 94.
Right.
May, June, July, August. We were there for 7 months of them writing and arranging. So sometimes we go up there for like 3 or 4 days in a row, and the band guys would go back home and come back and go back home and come back. And I go to Petaluma and come back. It was taxing, And so when they were there, they really dug in and tried to get these arrangements together, with the ideas that they were coming up with. I can't remember that if how Blayline was written. I mean, like I say, Les could have been on the phone with Tim and Larry the whole 3 hours they were driving home and back at their homes about how they were going to do it, and everyone collect your ideas. Well, we were making cassette tapes.
Yeah.
Right? Recording to ADAT, knowing they were jams. We would record, and then at like 8, 9 o'clock, we'd be done. Les didn't want to go any later to piss off his neighbors. So then I would sit there and dupe cassette tapes, 3 cassette tapes, one for each of them, of what had been done that night, And so they could go home and sit in their car for 2 hours and listen to what had been arranged. And then they talked about it, showed up the next day, they all discussed, and then, okay, move forward on that one. We like this, we like that. I like that drum part. I don't like that guitar part. Changed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like that because there's no computers and there's no internet, That's all it was. Go home with the tape of the jam tonight. Come back and we'll try to get a better take of it,
I mean, not to divulge too much, but that's one of my favorite tracks on the album. So that's why.
No, I heard it. I haven't heard it in a while, and it's awesome. I do like that song.
Yeah, it's got a really good groove to it. The drum part's different in a really great way. He's not hitting on the 2s and the 4s, which is really cool.
Yep. I mean, Tim was always trying to come up with something outside of the norm. I mean, that's kind of his vibe, and he proved that he's the champion of that with this record, because if you listening to all these songs beginning to end, it is like all over the place with what he's doing with no rhyme or reason on a lot of it, Yeah. Yet it's all in the pocket of what's going on with what Les is doing, Yeah. It's trippy. His little dings and splashes and bings and octobon hits out of nowhere, they all make sense,
Right. Absolutely.
I think what happened was, I mean, he really liked that song. I like that song. I have always been a big influence on him as a bounce back on Is It Good or Bad?
Mm-hmm.
And I gave that one a 2 thumbs up. So he really pushed it, and they released it as a single.
Yeah.
And they did the Conan show on it, and it fucking tanked. Nobody gave a shit about it. So he just kind of said, whatever. I mean, we played it through the Punchbowl tour off and on regularly. Everything rotated. There was not a set list through even back in the Punchbowl days. It was always different every night.
Yeah, we got the singles. I got the jewel case version, and Josh has the cardboard sleeve.
Yeah.
I can't, I don't have my CDs. I have a lot of goofy oddball stuff and promo stuff from Primus. I can't show you guys because I don't have it. It's in a box. I saved all of it, but I have some cassette tapes from all those recordings we did as well. But it's interesting that, Les is the kind of dude that in that situation, particularly, after the Beaver took off and that became the next one and nothing happened, I think it hits him in a personal way that he doesn't express it openly. He just doesn't want to play a song anymore.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
All right.
So we played it through the tour, and then that song disappeared until decades later,
Yeah.
It never came out for decades.
Right.
Because he felt that he failed when he released it as a single, I think.
Okay.
I mean, I'm guesstimating, dude. I'm not telling you what he said or anything, but I'm just telling you as close as I've been to him, those are the feelings I got out of it, Because it like, after the Punchbowl tour, it fucking disappeared. It was not on the Brown tour at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's actually a recording of a show from the Punchbowl era where Les tells the audience that if they could do him a favor and pick up the phone and call the radio stations and ask for Mrs. Blayling to be played, they would make Larry's mother very proud and very happy. And it's the first and only time I've ever heard Les requesting the audience,
solicit the crowd,
to do something like that. So you can really tell that he was pushing for the song to be as successful as Winona.
That was a combination of two things in that moment that you just described. One, the single failed. Two, he was super stoned that night. I probably rolled him a big fat doobie right before they went on because he requested it and was pissed off because he got the returns that Interscope is dropping it as a single or something, I don't know, because the guy was on the phone all fucking time, man. I don't know what he's talking to or what he's talking about. He was very private about his business. And he still is, He should be. I mean, that's the way it is,
Yeah.
So you shared some really fascinating stuff about Winona, and I think we still have to go over the video. But before that, I'm really curious. We spoke with Joe Gore, and he told us that Les actually had Winona Ryder up in his face, yelling at him about the track. Yeah. Do you remember that? Because he said it happened on tour.
That's absolutely wrong. I'm going to tell you what happened. So before we did Letterman, we were just finishing mixing. I think it was done. It was in the can, and we were prepping to figure out the tour. And the single Winona had just been released. And of course it got fanfare because it was rocking, and everybody was like, "Oh, double entendre, Winona's Beaver. Ha ha ha." So immediately, of course, everybody on the planet thought it was about Winona Ryder. Now, Winona Ryder is a friend of mine. I went to high school with her. I'm personal friends with her.
Oh, that's cool.
And we ended up flying out to Washington, D.C. to do the WHFS radio station festival at the stadium, right?
Yeah.
It was the same festival or the same stadium where the Beastie Boys did that show where the chick got struck by lightning. Do you remember that?
Oh, my gosh.
It's where I can't remember what sports team. Anyway, big fest, big. So we fly out there. And this is like the first times I'm like flying around with Primus to do shows, out of being in a punk rock band. All of a sudden I'm like catapulted out of that into the studio, okay, here we go. And it's like, now I'm out in the rock and roll world with Primus, man. I was like, fuck, okay, guys, I can handle this. So we get to that stadium and everything's cool. The lineup was like some bands I can remember Better Than Ezra played. If you remember that band.
Sure, yeah.
And Soul Asylum was there.
At you, was Better Than Ezra. And then Hole played.
Okay.
Primus played. And then Soul Asylum played. Okay. So at that exact moment, when Nona was dating Dave Perner, the singer from Soul Asylum, right? They were boyfriend and girlfriend. Winona was there with Courtney Love and Drew Barrymore. They were all hanging out, right? Came to the show, get backstage, party up, hang out. So we're there, and we're just like, I remember sitting in, I don't know if you guys ever been backstage at a big festival. Sometimes the dressing rooms, there's not enough rooms, so they just put pipe and drape areas and put press in one area. Pipe and drape is like the curtains.
Sure, yeah.
Right. Okay. I remember I'm like running around with these guys. Okay, interview here, interview there. All of a sudden, chick from Interscope comes in with a stack of 50 fucking Punchbowl posters. Guys got to sign these right now. Fuck. And they're like doing an interview, and they get out of the interview. I'm like, come on, Sharpie. Come on, I'm pulling posters as they're signing. Let's like, fuck this, man. Let's go. Let's get out of here. It's like, oh, come on, you guys got to do this. So Winona and Drew and Courtney's room was right on the other side of this pipe and drape where we were doing these interviews, right? They had just a pipe and drape room. They didn't even have a dressing room. None of us did. Winona comes out and I see her. Oh my God, what are you doing? I'm here with Primus. Oh my God, Primus, they wrote that fucking song about me, and she's like laughing. And Les comes out and she's like, dude, what's up? And she kind of asked him. He's like, no, dude, I mean, it has nothing to do with you. It just happened to be the name I came up with that sounded funny, that rhymed. I spell it different than your name because I wanted to make sure you knew it wasn't about you. So we get back off the stage and Primus plays. I remember we had a problem with Larry's guitar effects thing for Tweakers was the opening song, and we couldn't get it to power up. And we finally got it to power up. Primus plays. Okay, we get done, and we're all done. And okay, we're drinking beers. Okay, we're all packed up. Soul Asylum starts playing, and so fucking we go up on the stage to watch a little bit of Soul Asylum, and fucking Dave Perner sees Les standing there and goes, motherfucking Les Claypool, Primus, fuck those guys, man. Motherfucking fucking girlfriend, fuck that asshole, man. This song's about you. It's called "Fuck You, Les Claypool," or something like that. We went into some fucking stupid rant, and we're like, what? We just were standing with Winona, telling her that it had nothing to do with her.
Well, it's fantastic to have you clear that up, and to have the actual story told here. Thank you very much, Tim. And this is one of the few videos where we can actually get to see the making of, and we can see how hard it was for them to walk in those suits. I've seen the suits in real life. They are at the Hard Rock in Los Angeles. Yep. And, they look so stiff. And
yep.
I can completely imagine how hard it was to do that video. And I would like to know your recollection about that day and that shoot.
Well, it was a long day, but I have very vivid memories of that day, of course, because I worked my ass off that day. First of all, let me ask you before I say anything. You saw the documentary of that video?
Sure. Yeah.
Is it public?
It's available as an extra in the Animals DVD.
I haven't seen that DVD. Do you see me at one brief second holding a juice box?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the same one that I remember. Okay, so what that was the president of Interscope at the time was not Tom Wally. Tom Wally was their A&R guy at the time. Yeah. President of Interscope was Jimmy Iovine.
Oh, Jimmy Iovine. Yeah.
Okay, so Jimmy Iovine was running Interscope at the beginning of Interscope, right? He came up with the idea when Tom Wally presented him with Primus and blah, blah, blah. Les just told me, Jimmy Iovine came up with the idea to have us be Duracell people. Because remember the Duracell battery commercials were going on? I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. I had not met Jimmy Iovine yet, I was like, oh, who's this guy? Whatever. Okay, I know Tom Wally. He's kind of a corporate dork, but whatever. He's cool. So Les worked tirelessly for months, on that video with Rob Shapiro. And so they worked tirelessly drawing the panels of what was going to happen and what the schedule of the shoot was and what was going to happen, blah, 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 blah. My gig was to go get the kick drum from the Buck Naked's mom and set up the gear in the barn, right? And I set up all that gear in the scenes where they're actually playing the instruments, right?
Uh-huh.
So they had to go stay at Les's house, and the crew showed up at midnight, and those guys had to get up at 3 a.m, and they started gluing all that shit to their faces. Right? And it took till the morning till their faces were they glued the foam to their face, right?
Yeah.
And put on prosthetic teeth, a foam, and blah, 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 all that shit. It was hilarious. So by the time I got there at 7 a.m, they were already half there, with the faces. They were almost done, but they didn't have the outfits on yet. And there's people in Les's living room with the outfits and they're all shining them up and making them look cool. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. So I go up and set up all the gear and then just went into a day of shooting. It's like, okay, scene 1, the band come marching up the fucking hill. Okay, scene 2, shoot the bottle. It was just a sequence of scenes that were all to be edited at the end,
Yeah.
And it was based around them playing in the hay bale scene in the barn,
Yeah.
With the funny coin-operated horses riding on the side there,
And you said that bass drum came from, that was from the band, the Buck Naked band.
Yes.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Les and Buck were good buddies because
Right.
Buck Naked, the dude, I've seen that band live a bunch of times. I know Buck. I met him back then. He used to be the door guy at the Berkeley Square.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Which is where Suck on This was recorded.
Right.
Right. So Buck Naked got murdered in Golden Gate Park one afternoon by a crazy pigeon lady.
Right.
She had his dog, was just walking by, and she thought the dog was attacking the pigeons, and she shot him, and he died. Anyway, to pay homage to his good buddy, he said, Soya, you got to go get this kick drum from Buck Naked's mom. You got to drive and get Smiley will get you the address. And okay, cool. So we used that kick drum. I had to go get it and bring it, and we used that as the forefront. And then the orange drums that Tim's playing are a Vistalite kit of Larry's that I kind of mishmashed together with however I could make it look like a funky, funny kit, right?
Okay.
And then the amp that Les is playing is a Ampeg Portaflex that he still has, actually. And we used it on the very first New Year's Eve that we did the Wonka tour.
Oh.
Not the tour, that New Year's show where we did Wonka. Were either of you guys at that?
I was there, yeah.
At the Fox?
Yes.
Okay. So do you remember the band came out and we had the old Primus banner hanging up in the back?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
kind
old
of came out in front of the curtain and played.
Yeah.
And the amp that Les was using that night is the same amp that's in that video.
Oh, great.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what happened was, I already told you that was my idea to do that, right?
Yep.
To do the band come out and play in front of the Wonka band, right? Anyway, yeah. So we used that amp, and then Larry bought that guitar that he played in that just for that video. It's a Gretsch Van Epps 7-string hollow body guitar, and he bought it specifically because it was oversized because it had 7 strings. And back in the 60s when they made the guitar super huge to accommodate 7 strings. So he thought it would look good against the big fat costume, right?
Yeah.
And hold on a second. I got to grab a beer. I'll show you something else. Hold on one second.
I think I know what this is because he showed me the other day.
What is it?
Oh, should I spoil it for you?
Okay, I'll wait.
I stumbled across this envelope of some choice Primus memorabilia I was supposed to send to Adam for something, and I never did, but this fell out of it yesterday.
There it is. You showed me this the other day, and I didn't tell Frankie.
You know what that is, Frankie?
What is it?
This is the guitar pick that Larry played in the Beaver video.
Oh,
Look how huge that thing is.
Because his fingers were so fat, we had to we made this out of hard foam board, and made it black. And that's the pick that he used in the video. I still have it.
It's awesome.
wow, that's amazing.
It's not for sale yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Depends on what you offer.
Let Frankie know. He's building his museum out.
Okay, so then we did the whole video shoot, whatever the fuck. We were there until the sun went down, until they couldn't shoot anymore,
Yeah.
I think the very last thing that we shot was the fish pole pulling the hat off of Tim in the end, the showdown.
Yeah.
That was the very last thing. Once they yanked the hat off of Tim and he looked around and did a little smirk. Okay, that's a wrap. That was the very, very last thing we did.
Okay.
And they ran in there and ripped that shit off their faces as fast as they could.
Based on what you're saying and what we've seen and what they've said about that video shoot, I would say that there's probably no more emblematic photo that captures that experience than the one in the Jay Blakesberg book of Les in that costume pointing one of the toy guns into his mouth.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that was a big fucking deal because seriously, dude, for how much shit that you see in that video and how much costume is going on and what they went through to get their faces like that, we did that whole fucking shoot in one day.
That's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, I'm telling you, man, and where Les's house is and where that barn is and where the studio was and me having to run back up and down the hill to get up in the back. Oh, Soy, go grab this. Oh, can you go do that? And there's people fucking running everywhere. It was hectic, man.
Yeah. You got your steps in that day.
It was very stressful. But at the same time, I was just kind of pushing forward as my new gig, working with Primus again. So I was just balls out, man. Let's do this. I'll do anything. Let's do it, man.
Yeah.
I'll hold your juice box, Les. That's fine.
I guess that brings us to Southbound Pachyderm. Now, this is a cool jam, and I'm curious, you being a drummer, that opening fill that Tim does, and now he's got to replicate that live, and he said that's kind of tough for him. Man, when he laid that down in the studio, how was that for you, if you remember?
It was impressive.
Yeah.
He told you it's tough for him live now?
I think he's said on his Instagram lives that he's dealing with some back issues, and he said that one is kind of tough for him anymore.
I'm going to call him out on that one. I'm going to call him tomorrow.
I shouldn't have said anything. Sorry, Herb.
He sits there and fucking his wrist go a million miles an hour. That's pussy-ass bullshit. He's talking about back on that, Phil. I'm going to call him out, man. No, I'm kidding, dude. Yeah, that was a very impressive moment. It's another one of those things that started with Les playing the bass. I remember that one. They fumble around with shit, and then it becomes okay, we need a big fucking intro fill in the beginning. And, a lot of times in situations like that, I'm not going to say that this is how it was, but it possibly could have been that Les said, come on, man, we need a big-ass fucking fill to get this thing right down to the one. And Tim goes, well, how about this? Yes, that! And it's okay, that's a fill, it was like a joke at first, but then it turns into, okay, that's it, man. You got to do that every time now, dude. Too bad.
Yeah.
That's killer, and we all laughed, and then it turned into what it turned into,
Yeah, for sure. That's great. I like that a lot.
Yeah. There's a bunch of these songs as I listen to them that I don't recall too much about the moments they were recorded. That's one of them. I remember that moment of the big fill and us all laughing at how fucking amazing it was, and it had to be it. And it's crazy to try to remember every single incident of every song. But,
well, and this one got the single treatment. I think there's a radio edit out there somewhere, and
totally.
And it got a video. So this one, I think, got a little more traction than Blaylene, but of course, definitely not as much as one.
Yeah, I worked on the video for that one too. We did that one as well, was with all the stop motion little foamy dudes.
Yeah,
and that was in some weird studio. I can't remember where we were, like a soundstage studio somewhere. I remember setting up drums for that, where Tim's wearing the army helmet thing, or with the goggles. I can't remember exactly where that was or how that went down, but I remember setting up drums and bringing a bass and bringing this. And I was always that guy that brought the shit,
Yeah.
And then, handed the dudes the water and got them a towel and, okay, come over here. Here you are.
And Frank, I think Frankie, you mentioned that.
Yeah, I'm pretty curious about the video because, actually I messaged you for the first time 3 years ago, Tim, to ask you a question about this video.
Okay.
Because you told me that they did record a full video version of them performing the track, and we just get a brief glimpse of that performance on the TV screens.
That's how it goes with videos. It's like they don't say, okay, we just want you to play the music in this little 2-second clip. So I set up gear, and it's like there's lights, and there's a dude running lights, and it's like making a scene of how they want the band to look. And the band plays the song, and they use 8 video cameras to record it, and they play it like 8 times, in the day. Okay, we're done. We got enough. And then I tear the gear down and they go, okay, then the band goes away. And so then the director or whoever with Les goes through it, and they find spots that are great, and they filter them into the footage of what's going on. So,
okay. Yeah.
We were there all day with the band, just the band filming the band playing that song like 8 or 10 times,
Well, our next track is Space Farm, which is a filler track. And you said you weren't in the room for that one. Is that right?
No. That was one of those ones I showed up, and it was Les and Larry did that stoned one night. I missed that. They totally did that. I think it's more of a Larry song. I think Les might have had the bass parts, but Larry turned it into the hog sounds. It's funny. It's interesting because the beginning of that recording was right when a bunch of music and movie studios were releasing uncopyrighted samples of sounds and stuff, right?
Okay.
And I remember Les and Primus had bought, it was like this box set of like 24 CDs, but it was like,
wow,
$1,200, of all like Warner Brothers Pictures sample sounds that you were okay to use wherever you wanted to use.
Oh, wow.
It was something like that. And we had a bunch of those. That was one of them. And so that's where a lot of all that weird filtered in. The crowd at the beginning of Nut Butter and all the pig and all that.
Oh.
It was all like it was released of copyright. You could just use it,
Okay,
so
nice.
You couldn't just play a pig sound and somebody go, oh, that's from, Charlotte's Web. I'm going to sue you for fucking $10 million because you used my pig sound. It was like uncopyrighted, released catalogs of sounds you could use from movies. And that's where a lot of that stuff came from.
So they had a pretty fun night with that then.
I guess. I wasn't there. I showed up the next day. I remember, I swear to God, I was listening to that song again. I laughed too because, the song is hilarious and I was laughing and I knew it was Lurk, because his stoner fucking goofball. And when it gets to the end where it goes, it's all,
yeah.
And it keeps going and stopping and going. Dude, I remember laying on the floor at the top of the stairs behind the monitor desk laughing so hard I couldn't even breathe. And Larry was just laughing with me going, dude, so stupid. I'm like, dude, that's the best ever. So funny. That's funny. I saw on the Primus Sucks thing, I've seen a lot recently, a lot of people say, Space Farm live. Come on, man, they got to do it.
We could campaign for that. That'd be a good time.
Ironic because anytime anybody who's a super Primus fan asks me, what's your favorite Primus song on Punchbowl? I always say Space Farm, of course. Of course.
It's a delight.
The best song on the record, Dan.
It's a fun one. It's quite a novelty as well. So I'm glad it was just the product of a stoned evening of making each other laugh.
I don't know. I wasn't there, man. I'm guesstimating, man. There were a lot of weed was getting smoked during that record. So
I'd call that an educated guess.
Yeah, that's another Primus song that's never been played live ever.
Right. Yeah. Well, the next track is one that hasn't, I think, only a handful of performances at the most, and that's
only twice.
Twice. Wow. And that is. Yep. I don't think I've publicized this, but I will happily tell all of you that this is my favorite Primus song. Wow. I love it to death. I don't know why. There's just something about it that gets me.
This one is great. I do remember this one coming about, and it started with Tim's drum beat, of course, and then Les fumbled around and came up with that bass line to go with it on the spot, you know?
Uh-huh.
And it turned into the song, and one day I came back and Les had the vocals, and I was like, oh, shoot. What are you singing about? What are you saying? And me and Les had a conversation a day or two before that. And we were talking about a band where the guitar player, very famous band, I'm not going to say who they are unless you really press me, where the guitar player was being super cocky pop band, you know, like cheesy third-rate pop band that somehow got their successes.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's still a wide net you're casting, so don't worry.
Well,
yeah.
So I read an interview with the guitar guy, read a magazine because there's no internet back then, and he was telling the dude's asking him, "Man, your guitar parts are so cool, but they're so familiar. Why is that? How is that?" He's like, "Well, my favorite thing to do is to take a Led Zeppelin riff and change it a little bit and make it my own riff, and that's how I get my sound. Was my extreme influences by other bands." And me and Les were having a discussion about this because I was pissed off about it because I hate this fucking band. He's like, "Man, that's fucking bullshit, man. That's like plagiarism, dude. How do they get away with that? And they're like these bazillionaire pop stars on MTV, and it doesn't make any sense that guy's getting away with it, not getting sued by said band, Led Zeppelin, you know?"
Uh-huh.
And so all of a sudden he started fumbling through the lyrics. You know, usually it would take 2 or 3 times I come back and the lyrics would be a little different, you know, and he'd work on it, you know, but he got it structured, and that's what that song is about. It's about said band ripping off other bands just for their own successes. Yeah. And they achieved it.
So that's straight from that conversation, because that line, take a Zeppelin riff and you alter it a little bit, it's right there.
That's exactly me and Les's conversation.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. That's so cool to have that, make that mark on there and get it into the lyrics. That's great.
Well, I mean, you know, it's like, that's what you do when you write lyrics, is what's going on, you know, what's going on around you. You got to, you know, take in any ideas of what's current, you know?
For sure. And I don't know. There's just something about this track that part in 7 is kind of jazzy, kind of funky. And then they get into the part that's in 6 and it just rocks. And just you know, I love that stuff.
Yeah. That's why I really wanted to read those lyrics. I'm going to have to look them up tonight after we're done with this. Because I remember reading the lyrics going, wow, that's really cool. Me and Les had a conversation and it influenced him to write out this whole thing, you know? I mean, it's poignant, you know, because it's important to note things even without naming names, you know, that's going on, you know?
Right.
I don't think you always have to name names. I think just suggesting that this is what's going on. You guys better pay attention because it's going on, you know? I love that. And it spawned out of a little conversation me and him were venting about this said band, you know?
And Tim, I mean, you have more insight than us regarding why some particular songs get played more often than others. So what's your theory regarding Year of the Parrot? I mean, why was it played just a handful of times and then forgotten forever?
You know, I don't know. That's a song that I always push for because I love Tim's drumming and I'm a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a unique drum beat. I mean, I can't play it. I mean, I don't know how the hell he came up with that on the fly and said, check this out. Boom, cut, boom, boom, cut, boom, boom. It's like, whoa, dude. It's like you're sitting there just like quiet, just going, holy shit, that's killer, man.
Yeah.
And then it's like, don't. And it turns into don't. It's like, holy fuck, man. That's dope. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. You know, maybe Les felt that, you know, somewhere down the road it leaked about who he was talking about, which I never leaked it. And just that maybe he thought a lot of times he'll get to the point with a song, even in the moment of it being good, that it's not cool to just diss people like that. you know. And I'm not going to portray that kind of situation like that, you know. I don't want to play that song. It's like, come on, dude. That's and he'll be like, no, not playing it. Nope.
Oh,
nope.
well.
Nope, we're going to do Pachyderm.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
You're right, yeah. If I'm ever, like, for some reason in the Make-A-Wish Foundation or something, this is it. I'm going to say, they got to come to my house and play this song. How about Hellbound 17 and a half? Here's what I remember them saying is they wanted to write, at least that title, Hellbound 17 and a half, would be the theme from a horror movie.
Okay.
But as far as that goes, but then it's this really cartoony car crash music, which is pretty wild, man.
I mean, that's more of that CD samples I'm told you about are in there.
Yeah.
That was another one of those whipped it out in 2-second songs, you know? It didn't take them long. They just kind of fucked around with it. And Les started singing the lyrics, and I laughed so hard when he said, "Is that tuna fish I smell?" I laughed so hard, you know?
Yeah.
And he's like, "Okay, that's it. That's the lyrics. That's it."
That
so
was
stupid, but so awesome, you know?
Yeah, and it's what I really like, or I should say that track really lets Larry kind of really go off the deep end, and he certainly does. So was it kind of because you said the pattern was they'd get the drum and bass really locked in, and then Larry would come in and put his stamp on it.
Well, I mean, they'd all jam together, but a lot of times Larry would redo his shit, you know? Like, he wasn't always happy with his on-the-spot stuff at that time, you know? So Les and Tim really concentrated on getting that solid foundation, and Larry would figure out his shit as he went along, and then once it was laid down and arranged, he'd always go back and try to make it better for what he thought would be what he wanted, you know? And that song was one I remember we sat there with Larry, and he just was like, ripped that shit out, you know? It really that one was really fast. Didn't take much to make that one.
Oh, interesting.
They wrote it fast, and we recorded it very fast.
Okay.
Did you catch any 3D tour shows, Tim?
I did. I worked at Brad Sands, the tour manager's house caught on fire, and his house got burned, but it was saved. I got a call out of the blue. Soya, you got to go fucking help out, man. You got to go do these 2 shows as tour manager, and we're going to do Bottle Rock Festival in Napa, and they're going to play a show in Eureka, and then if you can get them to Idaho on the bus, Brad will make it to Idaho in like 5 days. Okay, yeah, I can do that. So I went and did it, and both those shows were 3D shows. So
that was really...
to stand on the side of the stage and put the glasses on and see a little bit of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really amazing how they brought back Hellbound during that tour. I mean, just twice. They only played the song twice, but still, it's one of the rarest Primus songs you could ever hope to get live.
Space Farm. Yeah, you know, I think they played it a bunch on the Punchbowl tour, didn't they? Maybe
just once. I mean, it's always been the ultimate rarity.
Trippy. I don't remember which songs got played more than others with these weirdo side songs that weren't, you know, hits or singles. But I love that song, Hellbound, actually.
Yeah, me too. I absolutely love that track.
Awesome. I love that one for sure.
Nice.
Moving on to Glass Sandwich, I wanted to ask you, Tim. Les said that this is another true story. Do you have any insight regarding the actual events of the song?
I actually don't, but I know pretty much what it's about. You know, in the old days, you go to the porn shop where there's the rooms in the back where the door goes up and there's a piece of glass and there's a chick on the other side of the glass.
Oh, yeah. So this actually happened to somebody, I guess. That's unfortunate.
You get the sandwich on the glass, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. That term, is that something that he coined or was that around? Because that's such a great term.
He made that up when that song title came out. I never heard him say that till that song came out. I'm like, glass sandwich? What the fuck is that? He's just like, that song, though, is that the one? Okay, hold on, because I just listened to this again. Okay, now on the tweet again. Glass sandwich is the upright with the bow, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I believe in some interviews he said that was a Tim and Larry thing. He said they kind of started that, and then he came in with the bowed bass later. Does that ring a bell?
That's the one where he starts out with dum dum.
Yeah.
Dum, dum, yeah. Okay. Tim started that first.
Okay.
Les said, "Come on, Tim, give us something." Okay. Thank you for jogging it.
Yeah.
It was, you know, you get to that point where they're beating some arrangement down, and it's like, okay, stop. Okay, enough of this. Tim, give us something different. Give us something else. And I remember him going, bum, bum, brrr, bum, bum, brrr, bum, bum, brrr, and then it just Les goes, jumped up and grabbed the stand-up, and it was like, okay, let's do this. Let's do something completely different. And it started with that. That's where it started.
That's awesome. It's really cool to hear those moments of inspiration because it's, I mean, you can guess when you listen to the record, but to get that, just go, give me something, and you get that right away. You
got to find it, and it's like everybody gets to that frustrating, painted into the corner with overthinking what you're doing. It happens writing music, I mean, you write music, Josh, right?
I used to a bit, but not much anymore.
I mean, when you're under the pressure of you're writing a record for record number 5 or whatever, it's like you get painted into a corner sometimes where you're like backed into the corner with dogs barking at you, You got to find a way out. It's like, we got to do something different to change everything. Tim, do this. And he just went, boom, boom, brrr, boom, brrr, and it just starts right there.
Wow.
Right so turn, cool. Fucking supreme, right there.
So that's kind of great that turned into something memorable for the record. Just out of that little moment. So cool.
I mean, it's a really dark song,
Yeah.
That one and On the Tweak Again are both really dark songs. Those are the 2 darkest ones that I recall in that moment going, wow, these are some deep, dark moments going on with all this other shit.
Yeah, I was curious about that because you just in general, because Pork Soda is often categorized or characterized as the dark Primus album, but then the themes on some of these tracks on Punchbowl, I mean, the band was doing really well and they were about to really break out, but you get these, you get this lyrical content. You're like, wow, some people have it rough.
Dude, I really wish that I could give you guys a little more in depth on other songs about lyrics, but like I say, Les is really secretive about a lot of that stuff,
Uh-huh.
And he divulged some stuff to me, and I'm divulging to you as much as I can remember, but he never would tell me anything that I could tell you that would be some super dark secret stuff he doesn't want anyone to know, because he won't tell anybody that stuff.
Yeah. Well, the next track is fairly self-explanatory, Del Davis Tree Farm, which was an actual Christmas tree farm, so which is a little more cheerful.
Sign. I know about it.
Those symbols that Tim said, I couldn't tell you what kind they are, but they do, almost vaguely sound like Christmas bells of a sort.
Yeah, he's got a lot of that stuff going on around his kid, always.
Was that planned in that? Because did they have that idea or do you think the Christmas tree farm thing came from hearing those symbols in the mix when the instrumentation was taken care of?
No, like I say, we recorded that record up into Christmas time, and
yeah.
A lot of these songs were just written with no lyrical idea involved, and Les would have to come up with it as time progressed. Like, okay, we've got this jam, we've got it arranged, we've got all this stuff, I've got to write lyrics for it,
Mm-hmm.
and he would just come up with it. And of course, driving down the fucking street, and he's Del Davis, fuck, that's where I always get my Christmas tree from that funky old dude, Del Davis, That's a real story. All those lyrics are real, I mean, he might have fudged a little stuff to make it rhyme, but that's where he would get his Christmas trees when he first moved up to Sebastopol, was Del Davis's ranch. And it was whatever, man.
Yeah.
I used to see the sign every time you drive by. It's like this sheet of plywood with painted white, and in red it said Del Davis with stencils, and it said Christmas Tree Farm with a stenciled Christmas tree. It's like, there's Del Davis's farm. There it is,
Nice.
I don't know. It's like Les's shit when he's on his own with his family, And he came up with some lyrics out of it just to fill up that song with lyrics,
Mm-hmm. And that one's a pretty heavy, funky tune. That 6-string,
totally.
That fretted 6 sounds great.
Fretted. That's the best one, man. He used that one like a motherfucker on that album, and I was so happy because that bass is my favorite. That and the 4-string OG with the Geddy Lee signature is the best, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you. Definitely.
The rainbow bass is fluff. Great stuff got written on it, but it's like, I don't like that as much as I like that fretted one.
Well, that attack on that fretted 6, man. Oh, boy.
Good Lord, dude.
All day.
And that pickup that's in that EMG that's the first time they made Les a special pickup just for that bass.
Oh,
that's
wow.
The first custom pickup that they made for him was in that bass.
Yeah. And I'm curious, because that riff just gets me, that bass lick gets me on this track, Del Davis. Were there any that come to mind for you that when you maybe heard it for the first time when they were jamming it out, or you heard it on one of the tapes, you went, that's money right there?
Well, nah. That one, no. I mean, I remember them doing that song, and I remember going through it and dealing with it and mixing it and all that, and it just was like, there's so many songs, and they're so long. I mean, it's a long record, I mean, it was a lot of work to go up there and mix one song all day for 8 or 9 hours, and you just,
Right.
you get numb to whether it's good or bad. That's what it is. And you have to do it because it's the job,
Right. Yeah.
Mix this record, and Les says, do this, make it, turn that up, turn this down, do that. Go over there. All right, I got to do another bass line right here real quick. Let's over that. That's just like, okay, Del Davis was next. Jesus Christ. It's difficult when you're doing a record with that scope, like that they did on that, and it was all made up on the spot, or, initially made up and then arranged within the 6-7 months that we did it,
Right. Yeah.
I'm curious about the answer jig, Tim, because I read an interview with Herb where he stated that he hated that song. Do you recall any tension or any venting during the recording of that track?
No, I think that his venting was playing it live is what he didn't like. Whenever they made stuff in the studio, they just made it, and everybody knew Les had whimsical little side shoots of songs he wanted to put in there. That's the nature of Les Claypool, and when he makes a record. And they made that song, and it was fine. It was cool. It was funny. It was a stand-up song. Les always wants to get 1 or 2 stand-up songs in there, to mix it up. And then the lyrics got written, and it's all about his Elsa Brandy days as a kid, as a teenager, which is hilarious. And I sang the whole song. I know almost every lyric to that song, so it was hilarious. But when they played it live, I Tim really wanted to rock. Les started shifting gears down and not trying to be that get the crowd pumped and do the fucking thrash crowd anymore. He didn't want to do that.
Oh, right. And
so when they would do the Anza jig, Larry didn't care. He put the banjee on and just played it. Didn't give a fuck, And Tim was just like, this is stupid. I'm this fucking ripper. He was not thinking that in his head. He's just thinking, why am I just sitting there going, come on, man, let's play some fucking shit. Man.
Right.
I think that's where his dislike in it came from, was that it just wasn't that fun to play live for him.
That's very interesting to know. It makes sense that he disliked the song from a musical standpoint in a live setting. Because when I read the interview, I assumed that he disliked the song because of the lyrical content, because he had previously been critical about the lyrics on some songs.
Oh, I don't remember Tim ever being critical about not liking the lyrics on Deanza Jig. It's obviously about Les Claypool's fucking hangout with his pals, Flounce and Fred and all his other chums when he was a kid, in high school or post-high school, Les sings about whatever the fuck he wants to sing.
Yeah. It's a fun little diversion, I guess.
I mean, that song, Frankie, you could probably confirm, was played almost every night on the Punchbowl tour.
Yeah, it was on heavy rotation for Punchbowl, and then it disappeared completely, and they only played it twice a decade later.
Whatever. I thought it was cool. I dig that song. Old Flounce and Freddy's in there. That's funny.
Yeah, for sure. We all know old Flounce and Fred.
Have you guys met him? He's awesome.
Well, I don't know if I realized it at the time, but it would have been the Vegas show in 2010, that midnight show. I just went up to the merch table and bought a poster, and it was Fred. And I didn't even realize
he was doing merch. That's funny.
I was like, wait a minute, I just bought a poster from Flounce and Fred. Oh my God, I didn't say anything. Well.
That's awesome. Oh, Flounce, he's hilarious, man. Anyway, I dig that song. Like I say, it was just another one of those Les pulled the stand-up out and said, we got to do something on this thing, and then just started doing it. I mean, obviously, he could have had the idea, or he had the jam in his own time and said, I got this. Let's play along. Here we go.
It does seem like that. I feel like that must have been sitting around, because he did say at some point, that's one of the most melodic bass lines he'd ever written. And I think he was saying that at the time.
You got to figure, Les sits there and fiddles on the fucking bass all the time, you know, and it's like he's got a pocket full of stuff, that he knows that he jams now and again and hasn't made a song out of it yet. And then when the time comes, he'll go, how about this, guys? I got this one. Come on, Larry, get the old banjee. It's like, all right, cool. Larry goes, and Tim goes, okay, cool, that's it. Let's do that for this many times. How many times? Okay, recorded. And then it's like, come back 2 days later, and he's got these lyrics about Elsa Brandy. It's like, okay, that's cool. Whatever.
Excellent.
Your record, dude, not mine.
And speaking of lyrical content, the next one has some familiar lyrical content on the Tweak again, with the old methamphetamine making its reappearance for the 93rd time.
That actually goes back to Les's time back in Elsa Brandy and all those days when he was a teenager, Everybody was on speed. around him.
Right. Yeah. And I was curious if those, Barris Jeffries, that and all that kind of stuff.
No, because that's all Les way before I met him stuff. That's deep, dark stuff that he's just kind of filtering in,
Right.
Knowing that nobody's going to know who the hell it is or what it's about, It's more secretive than anything,
Okay. Yeah, because these are a little more vague. I mean, the story makes sense, but I'd say some of the lyrics are a little more vague. So it's like, okay.
Yeah. I like the jam. I like how that one kicked in. I remember that was one of the first times Les let me take a cassette tape recording after the night and take it home and listen to it on the way home and come back with it the next day, where he normally would not let me leave with any format of anything in my car for fear I was going to give it to somebody, or let somebody hear it, including my wife or my girlfriend at the time. But I remember driving home just going, I was like, fuck yeah, this one rocks, dude.
Yeah, that's got some nice low end to it for sure. And it's a little, this is where, this is one of those tracks I think that's a little looser in the sense that it doesn't have more of the complex structure and riffing and licks, but it's a nice groove. And it definitely, that really gives it some kick.
Totally. I mean, that song is another one of those dark weirdo ones that's just, they're just fumbling through stuff, trying to find something, make a song out of it,
Yeah.
And then Les comes up with the weird lyrics always.
How about the last, I guess, song? We've got Captain Shiner yet, but Over the Electric Grapevine, that one gets played live a lot. It's got a pretty clear story, and Les has told that story about him and Adam driving down to L.A. and all that good stuff. How did that start with that bass lick that he does at the start of the track, or do you remember how that came about?
This is one of my favorite songs of Primus is this song. This song in particular live is one of my absolute favorite Primus songs.
Yeah.
And Tim's drumming is incredible. And I remember when we set up his drum kit, he had a floor tom to the left side of his hi-hat, which I'd never seen before. And he, like I said, he built that drum kit with Joe Hibbs at Tama, and it just showed up and I set it up and I was like, oh wow, floor tom over here. That's cool. And I am now really deeply thinking, I remember him saying, or we were talking about that, and he's like, oh, yeah, I got to get a riff on that tom. I got to get that in there because I have it. I have all this other stuff I didn't normally have, but I got to make sure it's in there for something. And I remember he just started playing that lick.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have worked on that at home in his studio and then brought it to there. I didn't hang out with him at his studio when he's alone trying to create his own stuff, So as much as I can say all the stuff was created on the spot, they were creating their own stuff in their own spaces and then coming together and saying, okay, I came up with this. Or you sent me, I took that tape home of your bass lick, Les, I put a drum groove to it. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So you got to go loose when I say it was all created on the spot. I mean, there was no computers back then. It was, you had to take the tape home and jam to it and then come back 2 days later,
Yeah.
So I do remember him going, oh yeah, that. And maybe the next day he came back, goes, okay, I worked up a groove on the floor tom, check it out. And then Les went, and he just started playing along with it, and it starts right there.
Okay.
And it just goes out,
And then they build it out from there. I got to say that it's a great track. That's a great track. But I got to see the 3D tour, and Jay was, of course, drumming on the 3D tour, and I was pretty close to the stage one of the nights I saw him, and that he was working really hard, on this.
Oh, I didn't know that they did that song with Jay. Was he good on it or bad?
Oh, yeah. He was working hard.
Yeah, he was excellent.
But he could bring it. But this recent Live from Pachyderm Station broadcast, we finally got a really good look at what Tim's doing on that track. And so just to see it gave me a whole new appreciation for it, for a lot of things we've talked about before, including Tim's economy of motion and just having that tom on the left side there. He doesn't have to go too far, and it's just like an ingenious setup. And as you alluded to earlier, he's got really fast hands and wrists. He can make this happen.
It's a bizarre riff, and the way that he laid that down, I never really thought about it. And, we were on that tour, and that was always my favorite moment in the night because they would always play it at the very end,
Uh-huh.
It was always the last song of the set. I don't know, Frankie, you could have to look at the set list and see, but I remember it was always late in the set.
Yeah, it would always come out near the end. That's right.
Near the end, or it was never the encore because the encore was always Tommy or something, But I just remember like I had so much stuff to do at the end of the night because I was the personal assistant on that tour. I wasn't a tech for the instruments. I took care of the band. You know, I traveled on the bus with the band. I took care of their luggage. I took care of them. We went golfing. I hung out. I was their buddy that took care of them, you know. And I had to break down the dressing room gear. We had like 2 little amps and a little drum set up in a dressing room that they could jam on if they wanted to, right? Which they didn't do too much back then. But I remember particularly they played one night at a place, I think it was in Cincinnati, called the Nautica Stage. Can't remember what city it's in. Somewhere back east or in the Midwest. And the venue was like an outdoor little tent kind of thing, like little seats that were temporary. What do you call that? Festival seats. You know, they weren't permanently put in there.
Okay. Was it just like
bench seats that roll out and stack up? You just open them.
Oh, just some bleachers?
Bleachers, correct. So there's bleacher seats and some chairs on the floor just in this area right on the river where a bunch of bars were.
Okay.
And I remember I got so caught up in that song and the way the lights were going and the way Jake was doing lights on that, twisting these lights around on the screen. And I just stood there. I was just like enthralled. And this boat pulls up with all these old people. They were doing a boat midnight or late night boat cruise. And they're all getting off the boat. And I was watching them going, yeah, these old people they're going to fucking check out some Primus. Ah, yeah, cool. And it's like, I was like, yeah, this is fucking awesome. All of a sudden, I went, oh, fuck, I haven't fucking packed up the fucking backroom desk. Oh, my God. Oh. Pew! And I fucking ran out of there and had to fucking go deal with all this shit like lickety-split. But, man, that song would capture me every time, man. And still, to this day, they've been playing it, you know, and they played it at that show that night, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, we've said, it's been 25, 26 years, but just to be there for the creation of something like that, which is really a fan favorite going forward. That's cool.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, a lot of fans like a lot of songs that Les didn't like to play for a long time. And, you know, I'm always the one that's always going in there to him and going, come on, man, you got to fucking do it, dude. You know, and he won't do it. And it's like, you know, you saw the set list where it said we finally played Nut Butter and Soya wasn't there.
Yeah.
I've been bugging him for fucking years, dude. I told you guys that. You know? And he finally pulled it out when I'm not working. I'm out on Roger Waters and they do Nut Butter. I'm like, you fucking asshole. I called him the next day when I saw the picture. And he's like, I was like, dude, fuck, that song rips, man.
Well, the album closes with Captain Shiner, which is a reprise of the Dianza Jig riff. And that's on a bass banjo, correct?
That's just some bullshit they made up when no one
Okay. And there's more samples on it, though. I mean, the thing, my big takeaway is I'm realizing there's so many tracks with samples on it. I don't think I've ever put that together before.
Yeah, I had never thought about that either.
I don't know. That was another one that just showed up when the record came out. It's like, oh, Captain Shiner, whatever. Les stoned out in his fucking place in Rancho at the middle of the night. Can't play drums or bass, so he's going to make a goofy song stoned, you know?
Yeah, play his banjo. Well, that's the album. I do have a couple questions. You've been very kind with your time. If you got time for a couple more questions about the album itself. I mean, the big one, I'm sure that Frankie's got on his mind too, is was there anything left on the cutting room floor, or was that?
Nope.
Okay.
That's all of it. That's it. That's it, man. It got to winter, and if you notice at the bottom of the credits, it says without help of the Honda something generator or something. Yeah. Because where Les lived, when the power went out, it'd be out for like 4 or 5 days. We were at the very, very, very end of mixing for like a day. We had one more day to finish the last couple things, and he ran out and rented, you know, we had to get this generator, bring it to his house, and get the last final mixes done on a generator that the recording equipment was plugged into, and not the house.
Right.
Just the recording equipment to get the final mix done and get the disc burned and send it down to fucking Interscope, you know?
So the house has no power, but you're taking care of business in the studio.
Right on.
Tim, I'm pretty curious about your experience regarding the enhanced CD version of the album and the subsequent concert where they premiered, you know, the CD with the residents on stage.
I was there. Re-releasing the album with that on it had nothing to do with re-releasing the album. It was just to promote that new technology because they were so computer bonkers at the time to push forward with the computer technology, you know? And
were Les and Larry behind any of the animations that you see when you pop the CD in?
All of it. That's all the same stuff that's the cover of the album, dude. It's all the same stuff they were doing on these Macintosh computers that they couldn't I swear to God, dude, every month you had to buy a new one or you couldn't run new stuff that was coming out. You know?
Right.
Snowballing so fast. If you didn't have boatloads of money, you couldn't keep up with it, you know?
There's one more thing in the liner notes that I'm curious about, because it's, you've got your credits. There's all these names. We're familiar with a lot of these names. And then we've got, Herb uses Tama drums, cymbals, blah, blah, blah. Les uses this. Lur uses Bic lighters.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that?
It's odd because Lur had a really serious endorsement with PRS guitars at that time. That's what he was playing.
Yeah.
He didn't have an amp endorsement, and I don't know why they didn't at least say PRS and Bic. That's just Lur being a goofball or Les coaxing him into saying, let's just say this.
Oh, okay. I figured it was, this is his endorsement for the lighters he uses for the bong, but that's my guess.
Lur was smoking cigarettes at the time as well. So.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he smoked cigarettes for quite a while, like all day, all night. Yeah.
Oh, man.
And he doesn't smoke cigarettes at all anymore.
Well, I'm glad he kicked that habit. That's a lousy one.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just wondering about the concert with the Residents. What it was like for Les to finally get those guys on board.
That was a pretty odd night. It was at Bimbo's 365 Club on Columbus in San Francisco, which is an amazing club. I don't know if you've ever been there.
No, never.
It's like a show club from the 50s, 60s, when it's got the band stage on the side of the stage and then the show stage. And then they've got at the main bar, behind the bar, there's a fish tank. And in the fish tank, there's a naked lady laying on a couch that she's actually laying downstairs being filmed, moving around naked in the fish bowl.
Oh, I've seen something like that before.
Look it up. Slim. Bimbo's 365 Club. It's fucking hilarious. Anyway, we did it at that place, and Les is a huge Residents fan, as you know. Larry as well. Tim, not so much. Me, not so much. Not because I don't like him, just I don't know about it. Tim doesn't know about it much either. But Les invited them to do it. I don't know why, or I don't know how he befriended one of the dudes and got him to do it. And they showed up with the eyeballs and we did press release and press photos and a press video, and Primus went up and played. We did it on a really small kit, for Tim, and just did a couple songs, and the Residents played a couple songs, and that was it, man. It was just a party. It wasn't really a show.
Nice. That sounds like
I don't remember much of the Residents of it being good or bad. Or I was so busy working that night, I wasn't just sitting there watching. I'm always running all over the place, trying to take care of everything, at that point. So.
Do you have any recollection of how Les actually felt about the finished product? I mean, was he satisfied with the way it turned out?
It's weird. I don't, because I remember on the Punchbowl tour when they were getting the final edits of that CD-ROM, and it would get shipped out to wherever we were, and we had a computer in the backstage that was this archaic tower computer of Tim's that would play it. But we didn't even have a laptop yet then that was good enough to play it because it needed to be new. Tim got a new tower, Larry did. And they would sit in the dressing room and watch the whole thing and try to play with it, and do the interactive click on the Captain Shiner and, it opens up this video, or click here, it does this. I remember going in the dressing room a couple times, in and out as I'm running around doing shit, and I'd stop and they're all huddled around this little computer screen and they're watching it and they're fucking with it. And I'd stand over and I'd try to look. And I'd go, oh yeah, check this out. How's it turn out, guys? Unless it turns on. Go on, Soya. Go do your work. Not for you to see. Okay, Les, sorry, I can't do this right now yet. Okay, dude, I'm going to go tell somebody what I saw. The secretive Les kicked me out of the room. So, I don't know. They all had great high expectations for it, but, as we all know, CD-ROM came and went in a fucking flash of a pan, man. It was so useless, But, they took it very seriously, And
right.
they tried to make it as best as they could with the technology that allowed it to be.
Yeah. Oh, I spent thousands of hours with it, probably.
Yeah.
I had a great time.
Maybe 10 minutes with it. Went, this is so dumb. All right, I got other shit to do. I'm tired of Primus right now. I've been on tour with them for 6 months.
That makes sense. Well, thanks so much, man, for walking us through the making of Punchbowl and the circumstances around it, man. That was awesome and very enlightening for us.
You only got a fraction of it, man.
Yeah, well, the door's always open for you.
Just tell me when. I'll always call you guys, dude, or I'll always jump in, man. It's awesome.